So what kind of a mindset you have to be in to get rid of all of your loans? Coming up, the Iron Woman that plowed through 150K in a couple of years. You don't want to miss it.
A lot of it I can credit to my father. So when I switched to that, then you just could watch like the loans just plummet.
Yeah.
So,
You don't even talk about it.
no, because everyone has it. But it was also kind of shocking to say, oh yeah, that was 150,000. Like, one thing I geek out about is quantum physics.
It's possible that you and I maybe exist in multiple places at the same time.
Ooh, now we're just
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The people that are really good at collecting cash ultimately are just going to survive.
Right. Like this debt needs to be eliminated as fast as possible.
It's possible that the future of chiropractic or even acupuncture is in quantum physics. Hello guys, Hisham Amer here from ACU Advisor, and today we have a chiropractor from Wisconsin that plowed through 150K of debt in 2 years. Go ahead, Dr. Lona Cook.
Thank you, Hisham. I'm happy to share. I'm excited to talk about business and well-being and how it's all related. I've been in practice since 2010 and have had some challenges as well as many successes as well. And so hopefully you can get a little bit of what has brought me to this point.
Welcome.
You know, I just feel like we're in a really good position as holistic practitioners. You know, we can kind of see as many people as we're capable of seeing as long as we can communicate well.
True.
So that I think that is a big part of our success out here has been like just really recognizing like people are ready for it. It's a matter of like, can you communicate well to them? And then also like, how is your business set up so that you can provide it, whether it's, you know, seeing more people in the practice or, you know, we have a relationship with our school district where we provide some chiropractic services for their staff, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah. How's the insurance in Wisconsin? Does it pay anything? Does it not pay anything?
No, I mean, we don't have good rates. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
We do like in this area, because this area is, so of the three practices, this one's kind of in the middle, where there's a lot of people doing all right. And then there's a lot of people who are really struggling. So we do take some state insurance, which is a love-hate relationship. I was just talking about this with my team, because it pays really poorly. But we also get to see some people that probably couldn't afford to come in otherwise. So I think it's just a balance. Like, you know, each year we have less in collectibles from insurance and more from cash, which I imagine will just continue to go that way,
Yeah.
which I'm happy with. So
Yeah. And that's what I think is like most of these practices are going. Like the people that are really good at collecting cash ultimately are just going to survive.
Right. I agree.
So tell me about your loans.
Yeah.
So how did you, so Kristen was telling me you paid like over 100K in like 2 years, right? How did you manage to do that?
Well, I think coming out of school, I had right at the end of school, I read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. And, you know, he is like fanatical about paying off debt. And so that really motivated me to like think about my loans as just like, okay, I'm going to attack it. Like as the business starts to make money, I didn't feel like I needed to really like upgrade my lifestyle at the time. So to start the business, I actually moved in with my parents for the first 6 months. And then I remember there was like a clear point in where I was like, okay, it's time to go get an apartment. But, you know, I was just really conscious about like keeping my personal overhead really low. Every, you know, extra dollar that I could put on my student loan, I really did. And then I met Tori Robeson, who became my consultant after my first year. And he helped me strategize a little differently because at the time I was making monthly payments. So I just tried to pay a little bit more each month. And so I had gotten to the point where I was, you know, paying quite a bit each month just by doing that. But then he said, why don't you try and pay weekly, if not daily, on your student loan, so that the interest isn't accruing.
Yeah.
And so when I switched to that, then you just could watch like the loans just plummet.
Yeah.
So that was great advice. And so if we had a good collection day in the practice and I was able to put, several hundred on the student loans, I did that. And if it was not a good collection day and I only put $50 on there, I still was trying to like just get into the habit of like, even if it's $10, I'm still going towards this goal of getting rid of it. And then the second the loans were paid off, he had taught me, money is energy. So if we have been putting like $5,000 or $10,000 onto something, and that's like part of what has also helped like grow this practice, is having this exchange of like, I'm going to put the money over here. Then all of a sudden the loan's gone. It's like, well, you don't want to like stop that money flow. So he had said like, you got to instantly switch into like savings mode and create the same amount going into some place, so that all of a sudden your business doesn't drop just because you don't have like intention for that money.
Right. It's interesting how he talks. I mean, he looks at money as, you said, energy, right?
Yep.
What else did he tell you about that?
Well, I mean, oh gosh, we could go down the rabbit hole for like the whole hour on this, but, so the more you get into looking at almost anything, really anything, it's energy. Everything is energy. Even, whether we're talking about, the desk that's right here or a thought in our mind, they're different forms of energy. And so you really using your intention, and whether that's like writing down on paper what you want to have in, using, affirmations, just placing focus where you want to place it. That is so much of what has been drilled into my mind, is that you really create your outcome, you create your destiny. If you don't like what's happening, it's because you need to like reframe something or shift your focus or change the energy that you're holding, which sometimes is easier to do than other times. But you certainly can apply that same principle to your finances. And if you're constantly thinking about lack, I don't have enough money, or my bills are always coming in, or whatever, you have a bunch of fear over money, you're probably going to attract that same level of energy. So you do attract more bills, or you do attract some sort of financial hardship, versus like the affirmation or the way of thinking, like money comes to me, it flows in easily, I have purpose for money, money allows me to help people, etc. Okay.
Now let me ask you an important question.
Sure.
So, did you know about debt while you were going to school, or did you just get surprised after you left school?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I had always worked. I worked in undergrad and I worked in grad school, on the side. And so I had I would think, a healthier relationship with money than probably a lot of people, in that I felt like I always had extra money because I worked. So I didn't really have a like complex about like where money is going to come from. I knew like I could always make money. With that said, I did not have a grasp on how much money it was costing me, or that I was taking out in debt, because financial aid would just, the checks would come, I would cash them, and then the next one to come the next trimester. So I remember, I say this whenever I speak to chiropractic students, I remember sitting the last day in school, and they handed us a folder, probably similar for you, and you open it up and it tells you like how much money you took out, and so I remember I thought it was going to be around that, but it was also kind of shocking to say, oh yeah, that was 150,000. Like, oh, okay. And I'm sure like most of my classmates probably felt the same way, of like, wow, okay, that's how much I have after, these past 3.5 years. So like I said earlier, I had just gotten done reading that Dave Ramsey book on Total Money Makeover. And I think that was the book that got me like very much aware of like, this debt needs to be eliminated as fast as possible. And then I'm trying to think, John DeMartini, he's another chiropractor, but now he doesn't practice. He speaks everywhere. He talks a lot about this concept of like money flow, money energy, paying yourself more every quarter, even if it's just $10 more, just because you're the entity that's the creator of all of this. So why shouldn't you be paid first before your bills? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs get that flip flop. We pay everyone else first, and then we just take what's left over. And sure enough, by the end of the month, there's, not that much left over. So, between reading John DeMartini's stuff, reading Dave Ramsey, meeting Tori Robeson, and having him, go through money and my flow, and really orchestrating flow. I can't say enough about like trying to concept money as flow, this energy flow. So, you have your bills and automate as much as you can. If you're paying debt, you want to automate probably the minimum amount, and then you can attack the lowest amount, as much as possible, whether that's weekly payments, daily payments, or just making a double payment. And then, over the last 9 years, I've just tried to keep staying, financially responsible and paying attention to, like now I want to pay double payments on my mortgage. So I want that to come down a lot faster, because anytime you make more payments on these things that we carry debt on, you save yourself so much income in the long run. Even if, if you shorten that length of the loan in half, and let's say it's your mortgage, for instance. Let's say your mortgage is, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000 a month, right? Well, only a small percentage of that is actually going on to your principal. Sure. And so if you can make extra payments, even if they're small amounts, they're just bringing that back end of that loan closer to where, you pay it off 7 years earlier or 10 years earlier. And now think about all that money, that $2,000 or $3,000 a month, you can divert that into savings. So I think different financial advisors have totally different recommendations. I'm not a financial advisor. I just understand that, debt can be.
You just have common sense.
Yeah. Yes, but it's not common anymore. Everyone has debt.
What's interesting is, I think in America, like, you don't even talk about it.
No, because everyone has it.
Right. So even in school, I know everybody's in debt. Mm-hmm. Yet no one ever opens their mouth and say, mm-hmm. I'm in X amount of debt.
Right.
But it's cool that you had this in the back of your mind through school, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it I can credit to my father, who always was very much like talking to me about how bills need to be paid, thinking about money, because like if you take that $20 in student loans, you're going to pay it back, but it's going to be more than $20.
Where's your father at?
He lives around here too, but he also is an entrepreneur. So I think
maybe that's why.
Yeah, my grandfather was as well.
What does your father do?
My father first was owned a construction company. And then when I was a child, he was gone all the time. So he sold it and started to teach construction. But on the side, then he bought a bunch of land and turned it into a Christmas tree farm.
Oh, very cool.
Like 1 month out of the year, they sell a bunch of Christmas trees. And then he has this land that makes him money, essentially. And then my grandfather.
He probably doesn't have debt, probably.
No, he doesn't. No.
Okay, he just goes cash, anything, right?
I mean, he'll use debt as a means to, like, if it's financially smart to use it at that time. But he's definitely someone that recognizes it's a tool and to not let it, I think what happens in many cases is people see, oh, you have this thing, you have this really nice car, and they equate that with status. But I would assume majority of people driving some sort of really nice car actually are leasing it or are not, certainly it's not paid for.
Right.
So we've gotten into this illusion that somehow it's better to have all this extra stuff that we're not actually paid for. And that's where I can credit him, as like, he is not someone with that illusion, and is certainly someone that's like, you should pay for what you can actually afford, and not go above that. But with that said, he taught me, like, use a credit card, pay it off, build your credit, because there's times, like, for instance, opening a practice, I needed to take out credit in order to do that, but I also wanted to pay that back as fast as possible.
Awesome.
I've been lucky to have a platform ever since the first book came out. I've gotten to do quite a bit of, like, speaking and teaching. So one of the things I really feel is important that we don't talk about enough is in holistic health. We talk so much about the body being self-healing and intelligent. And a lot of times, in chiropractic, we use the word like above, down, inside out, like life energy, if you will, is connected through our channel, which for us, we talk about it through the nervous system and expressed outwardly. And so we can talk about that in the body. But one thing I geek out about is quantum physics at this point is showing us that consciousness is all connected. It is all energy.
Right.
Particles vibrating, which was kind of what we were getting into earlier of like, are you, using affirmations? Are you placing your intent in what you want versus, fear and worry and all these lower vibrational states? But we don't apply it to our business sometimes. So we might talk it to our patients and say, trust your body's self-healing, body's intelligent, look at your symptoms as intelligent, but we forget it in the course of our business too.
Right.
So seeing your employees as a reflection of you, recognizing if there's problems within the business, that's a direct reflection of you too. And that's going to take some self work and probably shift of your own mindset, your own energy to like elevate to the next stage of growth in your business or abundance or whatever we're talking about. So I think, Eastern philosophy has had this right all along, and we talk about it in health to some extent, but we don't apply it to everything in our life,
Right.
So whether we're talking about business issues or relationship issues, you really got to own this philosophy of that everything is happening through me, not to me. And so then you start to be really aware of, okay, like so many areas of my life are going well, but then there's this one thing that isn't. What can I look at in myself that either I'm like not harmonizing well with, or my energy's all goofed up? And as we try and like work on that, all of a sudden that shifts. So it really is this like inside out expression. And I think if you can look at the people that work with you in that way, man, you can have so much more like integrity in your relationships and trust and authenticity. And I think that's part of, for us, what has been really important in building our culture around here is like, whether it's the person answering the phones or the person that is coming in and cleans your rugs, like everyone is equally important. We might have different jobs to do, but we're all attracting each other to create this environment, to hold the space to have healing happen here and to work on ourselves. Because if I don't heal myself, I'm certainly not going to be a good conduit for someone else to be attracted in here.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys do acupuncture at all?
No, just chiropractic.
Okay. How come you don't do acupuncture?
That was part of my business model, is that I just really wanted to stay focused to chiropractic and teach people like how powerful the adjustment is. Because I feel like one thing in chiropractic that I will say now, it doesn't bother me maybe as much as it used to, but I felt like we always add everything in, whether it's therapy or nutrition or whatever. And, it can sometimes cloud the effectiveness of just what an adjustment can do for someone. So I think one of the things that has made our brand maybe different is that we are just focused on the adjustment and teaching people about the health of their spine and what chiropractic can offer to them, and doing it in a way where it fits into their lifestyle, not like, oh, you sit in my office and wait a bunch of, you don't wait for me. So whether you're coming in alone or with your 5 family members, we're going to make it work for your flexibility of your
Got it. And the quality of the service too goes up. The less you do, the quality.
Right.
It's just like a restaurant. The bigger the menu is, the most likely this food has been there for a while.
Yeah, for myself too. It's like, if you're going to choose some service, right, you want to go to someone who's like so excited about what they're offering you and is the master of that, not someone who's necessarily dabbling in everything.
So many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can expand too. I mean, you can have multiple spots like yourself in the same thing, so yeah. You know what I think, because I worked with a lot of chiropractors myself. And I was very lucky because I worked with probably the biggest clinics maybe in Minnesota and even New Jersey.
Sure.
And so I've realized that chiropractic is so similar to acupuncture.
I'm sure it is.
Practice management, it's like the same.
Yeah.
Well,
I just had lunch with a dentist yesterday, and the conversations we had, I was like, this is so similar. Like the challenges they have are same challenges that many chiropractic offices have. It's maybe framed a little differently, but it's really similar.
It's
There's a woman out here that I know, she does community acupuncture.
yeah,
And has kind of created a whole different business model compared to
right,
all other acupuncturists in this area,
right.
because she's able to see people all at once.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that style, like hers, is more similar to chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Well, like we have open adjusting here.
Right.
So families are used to coming in, there's multiple tables. I see that. I think if it allows a little more affordability as well as a little more flexibility, it's probably definitely something that the population is moving towards, just because everyone's busy, everyone's time is so valuable. And so if you can give them a great service, do it in a little different way, and there's more flexibility with it, I think a lot of people are for that.
And in my case, it was different from you. I come from a family that are like your dad a bit. Most of them are business people, finance and stuff like that. So, like, the first time I learned about debt, I was 15. And the reason I started to notice it was a red flag is because I noticed my dad in the financial aid office when I was going to college. He was asking a ton of questions.
Yeah.
And right there and then I knew there was a problem, right? Even though all the students around me, they don't talk about it. They just take the loans, pile the loans.
Right.
It's
so true. It's so true.
Yeah. So for me, so I do think a lot like you, believe it or not. Even though we're from completely different places,
Yeah, I believe
when it comes to money, we think a lot alike, especially when it comes to debt. In fact, debt goes all the way back to Jesus' time, right? In fact, there's the only time in the Bible when Jesus was supposedly freaking out is when he walked into the temple and found what they called them back then the money changers, right? And he was actually flipping the tables, right? So that tells you, like, especially someone like me from the Middle East, debt goes very deep. Like, it goes all the way back.
Well, I think it was Tori that taught me this. But if not, debt, the word comes from a word that's a derivative of death.
Like, I think the biggest scam in the U.S. is buying a house.
Yeah.
You might have a house, but I'm being honest with you. Like, if you don't have 3 times as much as the house, it's gonna like drain you.
Right.
And the best you get out of a house is 2 to 3% a year. So if let's say you buy a house for 200,000, the max you'll make is 2 to 3%. The reason that is you're constantly fixing it.
Right.
And you're paying.
And when you sell it, you got to give however many percent away to.
Right. You actually, every time you sell a house or you close on a house, you pay 3% in the garbage, right? And then there's taxes you're paying every year and fixing. And the amount of utilities. So the bigger the house, the more utilities you have. So you got to have, if you don't have like $600 to $1 million, right? Only then it becomes nothing. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And, since we were kids, like, it went from people using cash a lot.
Yeah.
To then, and people use checks a lot, but still checks represented cash. And the cash that you actually had, if you're writing it out of a checkbook. So, like, now nobody uses, for the most part, cash or check. It's all cards. So whether you're using credit or a debit card, it's totally socially acceptable. I think it's part of, like, separating us from the concept of actually using money, money that we actually have.
For me, myself, it's, if you don't need it, you should never have it. It's kind of a need versus want.
Yeah.
But you might need it. That you can actually use debt to make money, especially in real estate. But again, you'd have to put on a lot of debt, like millions and millions. So. But you brought up something about quantum physics.
Yes.
And that's something so new for people to talk about too. Right. You're almost you're looking into the future.
maybe, but also like our roots in chiropractic, and I would assume like most healing professions that honor the intelligence of the body, the people that began the profession, so like in our case it's D.D. Palmer, B.J. Palmer, they were so ahead of their time. So if we just can look at some of where they began, I think what happens is we want to be so accepted in like the medical model or whatever it is, and then we lose these roots that actually are like just so brilliant. And so like Dee Dee's way of explaining stuff, I feel like he was already on to most of this energetic concept, and like they use terms like man spiritual and man physical uniting, recognizing that we're more than just our parts in our physical body. And then you get into people now in this, era, like Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, who are chiropractor, medical doctor, that are doing more of this like cutting edge quantum physics based work within like human biology. And that is just so fascinating to me, because I think that is truth. We witness it every day, but most of us haven't either been around enough people speaking it to us in this terms, or reading enough to start to see like, wow, we are just so like stone age sometimes, the ways we look at the body, and like the way we diagnose it and the way we treat it, cutting things out of it. It just seems like so barbaric to me now at this point.
Yeah.
We're in.
Yeah, what you're saying is like, at least that's what I've been thinking maybe the last 3 years. Like, it's possible that the future of chiropractic or even acupuncture is in quantum physics.
I hope so.
And,
that would be amazing.
And the reason I say that,
the future of healing is in quantum physics.
Right. And the reason I say that is because when you look at, for people that are watching this, quantum physics is a science of the tiny, tiny particles. Like the particles you can't even see with your own eyes. I'm talking atoms. That's basically what everything around you is made out of. And when scientists look at atoms, they realize that they behave extremely different from the big objects that we see. For example, they sometimes disappear and appear sporadically, or appear in multiple spots at the same time. So imagine if we're made out of the same particles that Lona was just talking about, it's possible that you and I maybe exist in multiple places at the same time.
Ooh, now we're just...
Right? So, in fact, I think in Europe they have this massive, they call it CERN. It's a massive tunnel underground.
Okay.
And the NATO is actually experimenting with quantum physics so heavily there, because whoever's going to figure out quantum physics first could possibly have complete control.
Yeah.
This is how crazy it is. So,
but I think also in Europe, they've done a lot of studies on, I think, where like they can, like, why does it happen where something's never been done before? And then like, let's say running the fastest, 100-meter race or whatever. And then all of a sudden 10 people do it in the next 2 years after one person does it. Why does that happen? And they're saying it's part of the collective consciousness. So like when they study consciousness, they realize your mind isn't really even in your body physically, and that we're all accessing the same almost like database. And so when someone has a thought, or someone breaks a record or does something like that, now it's part of the collective. And so other people can access it because we're all connected through our life force, essentially. Yeah. This is getting into the whole thing of like the energy, right? It's just so fascinating, because it's like, again, we probably know just such a small portion of what really is happening in our physical body. And we try and label and say that we understand it, but really we're just scratching the surface. So I always say this to my patients, like, it'll be interesting in a couple 100 years what people look back and say about what we did to our bodies during this time. Generally in regards to like medicating, cutting things out, True. I don't believe we're birthed with organs we don't need in the body. But the more I get into the metaphysical end of things and understanding more mind, body, spirit connection, the more I think the physical body is just the embodiment, the the denser matter, just like ice is the densest matter from water vapor. It's just an embodiment of what this system is processing. So I'll give you an example. Like, it's so common that people have low back pain, right? But what does that low back pain represent? Yes, physically, we may see like a degenerating L5 or something that we physically could say, oh, this is why. But is that person also experiencing a lack of support or a ton of mental and emotional stress within feeling like they have to support everyone else? And it embodies itself in that physical system
Mm.
in the lower back. And Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, is a book that really started to open up those doors for me to understand a lot more of like this connection we all have. Our physical body is not separate from the mental and emotional and spiritual aspects of that human, whether they're conscious of it or not. So, how many people have total disharmony happening in their body and all these symptoms, and their outer world also has all this disharmony? And, it's like this reflection. So, I think so much of what holistic healthcare has to offer people is trying to connect themselves back to who they are so that hopefully they can make better decisions, not only for their health, but also just like in how they operate and process their lives. And then hopefully that helps them obviously not suffer so much.
What are like 3 pieces of advice you want to give to chiropractors, acupuncturists, anybody out there?
Oh, okay. From a business perspective, I would say read and learn about money and debt
Hmm.
and keep learning about it. Number two, I would say build a great team around yourself and treat them the way you would want to be treated. Most of business, I think, success is not that difficult if you use common sense and think about like, what would I want for myself, and then apply it. And then number three, I think, is what we talked about earlier in this podcast, which is really looking at everything that's happening in your life as connected. So we can't have great business success and repress an area of our life we don't want to deal with.
Sure.
It's all connected. So whether that be like financial harmony, relationship harmony, your health and well-being is all connected to your success in business too. And that was something that I realized, that as I was having success in one area of my life, there was other areas that I had not dealt with well. And so needing to go back and bring those areas some more light and love and create more of what I actually wanted, whether that took, going through some uncomfortable steps in the process, that's okay too. Is I think just trying to be the real deal, which is if you're teaching people holistic health, then you also should be applying those principles to your life.
Thank you for being on AccuAdvisor.
I appreciate the opportunity.